We have been studying maybe too deep, where we've been talking about genograms. And a genogram is really a family history. Where we're going with this is conflict resolution. Part of conflict resolution is understanding who we are and who our partner is, more than just on a surface level. For those of you that were here a couple of weeks ago, we kind of showed a surface look at a guy, just kind of a random guy that I made up. But we're so much deeper than that. We've got influences from our families, rules and things that we've learned from then, and we each have our own different sets of things that we've learned. And the way we see life, the way we process information, the way we reach out to each other or don't, the way we shut down or don't shut down, a lot of that is taught to us. A lot of it we're modeling, and a lot of it that's been passed down, we'll get into more in a moment, of we don't have to necessarily keep passing junk downstream to our children and to their children. We get to stop it if we really want to look at some of these issues and make some changes in our lives. So the reason for the genogram is to look at everything. I think it's easy, and for me it's easy in my head to kind of go, okay, I know this, I know that, but for some reason mapping it out has value to me. As a counselor, it has value to me because I can see a couple for generations, 3 or 4 generations of a couple sitting in front of me. I keep it right where I am all the time as I'm talking with a couple, so that when someone is getting triggered or something has gotten very sensitive in a session, I'm able to look back and go, I wonder if that came from a family of origin type issue, something that was learned, or did that come from something more recent than that? The other thing that we gave a glimpse of a couple of weeks ago was a timeline of hurts, disappointments, and losses, and that kind of put as a grid on top of our family. So I really want to, and that begins to kind of flesh out a little bit more how we see life when things get tough. So when stress is low, this stuff is just almost invisible. But when anything stressful starts to happen, if a fear is activated or a hurt or something shameful, then these things, we kind of kick back into old patterns and old things that we've learned. So that's when we're really, so when all is well, who cares what the past was so much, but when it starts affecting how you hear what I said and you think I meant this because that's what someone else might have meant, and maybe I meant that, but not knowing the difference, the genogram helps us know each other. And so what I want to do today is this is a glimpse, hopefully you see what I see. This is a glimpse of a genogram. This is one I made up. This is no client. This is nobody you've ever known. I just made it up one night. And we were showing some things. What I wanted to do is I've got some handouts. Maybe you can help me with this. For those of you that want to do this, I want you to try this as a homework assignment to just draw your genogram. It can be done wrong. It can be done right. I don't really care. It's really more just try to fill in, and it's got some directions on the sheet so that you'll know what to do. I don't expect you just to remember everything. And again, if a circle is a woman and a square is a guy, but if you get them backwards, I get them backwards sometimes, and I'll redraw them in the sessions. But I want us to start looking at where we came from, and now what you can do is take the genogram. There's a sample genogram on there of another fictitious couple. And then there's a blank one, I believe, on the back page. I did these about a month ago, so I'm trying to remember the order. But on the back page, show me the back page, somebody. Let me just see what. Okay, so that's for one person. So if y'all want to make a copy of that, and each of y'all do that, then you can tape them together and we can look at the whole couple. But that way y'all could do it separately. And you don't have to share them with each other, and you can share them. It's up to you, but I think it will help you realize some people really have epiphanies when they see, oh, so that's where I got that. That's when I say this to my husband, that was my mom talking to my dad. I don't want to do that. So sometimes those things happen. Sometimes it's not that insightful. But so I would just recommend that those of you that are interested in understanding yourselves better, and then we can choose how we use this as we go along in couple relationships, so that when we get to conflict resolution and communication skills, if I know who I'm really communicating with, or if a fear arises, to understand my wife's background or for her to understand mine, it can give us more empathy for the other person and where they're coming from. Yes? Yeah, I would say that's a great point. If your father wasn't there, just maybe draw a dotted line and put a square and just say left when I was 4, or left, never met him, or whatever that is. But I'm really looking more, and what I think more what I'm looking more for is what happened in your first 8 to 10 years of life. Now, if something major happened, if a rape happened, if abuse happened as an adult or as a teenager or in college or whatever, that's certainly important information. But I'm really looking for who were they when you were growing up. And I'll give you a good example. That's a great question in another way, in that, let's say Daddy was an alcoholic and raged a lot, and you never knew who was coming home, whether he's going to be Mr. Nice Guy whistling as he comes in or raging, let's say Dad became a Christian when he was 50 and has really repented and reconciled and made up and has become a wonderful, sweet man. Okay, that happens a lot, where people, as they get older, some of the stuff that had them cranked up earlier, now not so cranked up. So I'm really glad that Dad has had this great experience with God, but that doesn't help me understand how you were raised. A lot of our value system is created in those developmental years. A lot of our self-esteem is created in those developmental years. A lot of our sensitivities are created in more of those first 10 years. So that's really what I'm looking for, is the developmental years. Now again, if something happened, I'd put it on there. I think it would be good. That's huge. Absolutely, yeah, and that would help. Yeah, and so I would certainly put him on there. I would also put just a note by it. I mean, you're going to know if this is really for you, so you're going to know what you've done. But yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions? Because this is a little. I'm not trying to lead you to become experts at genograms. This isn't a counseling class. It's really to help you see where you came from. And for a lot of us, a lot of people will deny what's happened in the past, and we just don't want to think about it. It's too painful, or I don't really want to think about my mom and how she was, or my dad and how he was. And this is a good place to kind of get out of that denial of what happened and kind of put it down. And then there may be, there's several uses for this, and we'll get into it in a second, but you may want to resolve some of those conflicts. You may not be able to resolve some of those conflicts if someone has passed on, or if they don't want to resolve, or you may just need this as a couple. It's just good information to know, so that as we move towards each other, and let's say you're in an argument and we're full of pride and anger and we know we're right, our partner probably is going through the same thing, but to be able to go through this self-awareness piece that we talked about a couple of weeks ago and start working through, is there anything from my past that might be adding to this, that might be accentuating my sensitivity or my anger for what he or she just did? This might help me. If Teresa and I need to work through an issue and we get alone, that's what I'm doing. I'm going saying, God, reveal to me what's really going on. I'm a little too angry for what really just happened. What's my part in this? Reveal my sin to me. And this helps me find belief systems, rules. Where am I hurt? Why am I this angry? So this is just a piece of it. This isn't the whole thing, but it's a starting place of knowing who we are and knowing who our partner is. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? So, and I will say, if you do it, if you have a horribly traumatic past, you may not want to do this. I would recommend, if it's really traumatic and this is going to stir up a lot of junk, and if it does, I really would suggest finding a counselor to work through it with, because there's probably some healing that you can go through, or find a pastor to go through this with. But if that's your past, this may not be the best homework assignment for you. But if it's not, we all have hurts. We've all had losses. So I would say it's helpful for me. When I did it, I thought, God, I didn't even think about that. As I did it, other things kind of jogged my memory, and then the timeline was kind of the same way. So try that for homework, but the people that do this really seem to benefit. Or let me put it this way, the people that don't do it will never benefit from it. The people that do it, some will benefit, and it may really open your eyes to things, that forgiveness that needs to happen, for either direction, whatever. So I think, yes. That's a great question of basically, when we find patterns that we're passing down from our parents, is there any magic that we can do to undo it? There's no magic to undo it. Now God is powerful, and if we really believe in the healing power of the blood of Jesus, then absolutely there's hope for us to begin to heal from things that have happened. So yeah, that's a part of it. And when I'm working in individual counseling, I'm going to really go in through this genogram and help someone resolve these types of issues. It doesn't mean write a letter to Dad or make a phone call and say, let me tell you how you've messed up my whole life and thanks for everything. I'm trying to forgive you. It's not for that. But yeah, we're not stuck. And that's really part of where I want to go, is where do we go with that? And again, since this is about marriage, I'm going to probably keep it focused to how do we love each other? How do we move towards understanding in arguments? How do we have compassion for someone that's been through this, that's seeing life through a different set of eyes than I'm seeing life, and trying to understand what this must be like for you in this situation. Does that make some sense? So yeah, I don't think we're stuck. I mean, and some things will never change, and some things are worth working on. What I want to do is show you guys a clip. I've made reference to it now for about 2 months, and y'all are tired of hearing about the reference. So I thought I'd show you the clip. This is a movie called The Story of Us, and I have a little disclaimer. This is so that I get to teach Sunday school here for a long time, and nobody kicks me out. But basically, this is a story about, this is Michelle Pfeiffer and Bruce Willis in a movie called The Story of Us. It's a pretty tough movie to watch because there's a lot of arguing and fighting, but it's a pretty good movie to begin to see how they, where the movie goes and how they resolve it. So they can't stand each other. I'm going to set this clip up for you. They hate each other. The kids are going off, but they pretend like everything is good while they're around the kids. The kids are going off to camp, kid or kids, I can't remember how many, but they're going off to camp and they're going, bye kids, and as soon as it's over, it's like, okay, you go to your car and you get out of here and I'm going back to the house. So they separate for the week while the kids are gone. As they're going their separate ways, they kind of begin to miss each other, and there's a little phone call, and at first it's kind of tense, and then they start to soften a little bit. So then there comes a time when Bruce says, you know, oh, she says your laundry's in, and he goes by and picks up his laundry, but it's really more than just to get the laundry. They're beginning to want to reconnect a little bit, okay? So when this clip picks up, they have now, he came over, things are going well, they've been making out and stuff in the kitchen, and now they're ready to go upstairs and take it to the next level. See, that's what you say in church. You just say, they take it to the next level. You can read into that all you want, but they're going to their bedroom. Now, when you see this clip, they're in bed, but they're kind of talking and reminiscing about what has gone on over the years. Different therapists, wacky therapists that they've come in contact with. And so that's where we're going to pick this up. They're in a therapist's office, and this guy has prostate problems, and he has to go to the restroom about every 30 seconds. So this is, yeah, if you can dim that light. Tell me if you can hear it.
The 6 people in bed, the 2 of you, and your parents, and your parents. Now, the key is, will you excuse me, please?
I can't believe that guy charged us for the full session.
The man was peeing on our time.
All that therapy was just a waste of time and money.
When you think about it, where did all that therapy really get us?
Got us right here laughing about it.
He's right.
Oh, what are you talking about? Once it's broken, it can never really be fixed.
I don't know.
The Queen has spoken.
What?
Nothing.
Maybe it's just too soon.
Too soon? What are you talking about?
Let hard times bring you together. Nobody said it would be easy.
Can't we let hard times bring us together? Nobody said it was going to be easy.
It's like the Andrews sisters. After Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, and before Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree. Big career slump there.
It's like the Andrews sisters before Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree.
The Andrews sisters?
Sure. They didn't stop singing just because they had a few flops. They hung in there, and the rest is music history.
Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else
I just
but
don't understand
me.
why you're bringing up the Andrews
Anyone
sisters
else but
now.
You're singing.
It's just an example,
These
Katie.
kids are in trouble and you're singing?
I just don't understand what their career slump has to do with our marital problems.
Don't sit under
What
the
are we supposed to
apple
do?
tree.
Make it matters worse by dwelling on every little thing for the rest of our
Harry,
lives?
Is that what you think I do? Is that how you see me?
You're a child, Harry.
That I just dwell on
You're
everything?
a 72-year-old infant.
There are real problems here that we haven't even begun to deal with.
You think I know that? Jesus, what happened to you? What happened to that fun girl, the one with the pith helmet? Where does she go?
You don't think I ask myself that every day? You beat her out of me. There's no room here for her.
You think it's all fun and games, Harry?
So I guess it's all my fault that you hang on to every little
car
thing.
doesn't drive
It's all
by
my
itself.
fault that you can't let go of anything.
Someone has to take the wheel.
It's all my fault that you turned into your...
I edited that out for your pleasure. Sorry about, tell me, give me just a little bit of feedback. What did you see in this? You can leave that off for now. I'm going to show a little bit in the piece. This is a genogram in live action. Now, I realize none of us have all 6 been, hopefully in the bed together with our parents. But what do you see happening? Well, what do you see happening? Anybody? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what's your impression of this? Does this give you a little better feeling for why genogram is important? I mean, just from the understanding of, you know, her thoughts are their thoughts. They're not her thoughts. What they're going to go into that special place is to be together physically. And it's going really well until the thoughts and the words from their past start entering in. So all of a sudden, what you see, and I'll play it again. I'm not going to put the whole thing, don't worry.
Hi.
Listen, watch her.
All that therapy was just a waste of time and money.
When you think
about it, is it too soon? Okay, so she's not thinking that until her mother said that. Does that make sense? So she's thinking, I think I'll kiss my husband and finally we're going to rejoin. But because of what her mother said, she doesn't.
where did all that therapy really get us?
Got us right here laughing about it.
He's right.
Oh, what are you talking about? Once it's broken, it can never really be fixed.
I don't know.
The Queen has spoken.
What?
Nothing.
Maybe it's just too.
Okay. So, but you see the point. You can turn the light on now. I'm through with it. As she's thinking her own thoughts, there's an intrusion of someone else's thoughts. And so the genogram becomes important to understand what are the voices of our parents. Whether they're dead or alive, what is the voice? What is the critical voice? She's trying to enjoy herself, but her mother won't let her. And so she actually yields to what mom's saying, not what she wants to do. So our families of origin messages are very powerful. The voice of our fathers and our mothers, or whoever raises, grandparents or older brother, older sister, it's amazing that their influence takes over our own influences. Their words take over our own, what we think is best for us. And that's why I like this clip so much. Number one, to realize that there are really 6 people with you all the time as a couple, all the time. In every conversation at the dinner table, every vacation you go on, the shoulds and the rules and all the stuff that was taught, it shows up. It doesn't mean it controls you, but it sure is it's a heavy influencer in your life. Give me some more feedback after just seeing this. What else? It's a great insight. I mean, that's exactly where we're going, and that's a great point. We're not stuck. If we don't know if we don't know what's causing this, it's hard to know how to even pray or ask God, help me not be like that. Help me to change my belief system. But you're exactly right. We're not victims. I think that's a lot of what we kind of think is, I can't help it. It's just what we've always done. We sweep it under the carpet. We don't really talk about problems because that's what we've always done. He's not speaking for himself. He's just saying what he learned from his family. But you're exactly right. The power of the blood of Jesus is that God can change us. And we are not stuck with that. We actually get to become imitators of God and to become more Christ-like. To me, it's helpful to know what areas of my life need whacking on. What areas that I bring into this that I need some help with. Because, I mean, I think it comes down to, God, I need your grace to even heal from this or to see this differently and to, quite frankly, cut the tie of their belief system and have my own belief system, that you are my Lord and they are not. I think that's what I'm hearing you say in general. We're not stuck with this, but it is going to take effort. It is going to take God's intervention for us to change. We don't change. The problem is we try to change each other. That's what's going on in here. You're just like your mother. You should be different. You're just like this. I don't think we should do this. There's a lot of, again, when couples are in therapy or in argument, it's so much less about them than it is what they're protecting or representing. But what we need to do is get our parents out of the bedroom and our parents out of the kitchen and our parents back home where they live and our family at home where we live. That's really the goal, is to break those ties, not blow them off and who cares about y'all, but to take the string and cut it so that we're not just reacting as if we're puppets and they're the puppeteers. Thank you. That's a good point. Anyone else? That's a great point. And I like what you're saying, because to me, that's the sanctification process of marriage. That's why marriage is so difficult in my mind. I think God has put us together. I think if we stay single and we just go through life and we date the people we like, and then when we stop liking them, we stop dating them and we move on. Then we get to do what you just said. We don't ever have to work on us because it's somebody else. You just don't get me. I'll move on and find someone that does. When we get married, y'all have heard me talk about the rock tumbler with two jagged-edged rocks in the tumbler. That's marriage. And so now you don't just go, hey, you know what, I'm really kind of tired of this. You're kind of getting on my nerves, and your fears and your junk from your family of origin are really getting old. I think I want a divorce, and I want to get out of here. I want to do over. I want to go start over with someone else. Where I think God has really got us at that point to a place where we're really going to have to be dependent on Him to stay in this and engage. But problem is we don't know how to engage, most of us. We're not really taught how to engage, but I think you're exactly right. This is worth messing with, but if we don't, a lot of couples, what they'll do is just go, okay, this is your junk and this is my junk. Let's just tippy-toe around each other's junk and let's just not bring these things up, and we'll just kind of coexist, but at least we're not divorced. I mean, we're better than those other people that have, but there's no marriage. That's not a marriage. That's not a relationship. That's avoidance. That's tippy-toeing around for some people. I don't know how y'all do it. I'm not suggesting that I know what you do. I'm just saying that avoidant thing is not iron sharpening iron. It's avoidance. And so this whole process of understanding is what you're saying, of now that we're in a committed relationship with God as the head, now for a man to love his wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, instead of saying, I'm out of here, that's pretty huge. That's huge to me. It's huge to me from the standpoint of I have made a commitment and we're going to work through this, but pretending that these problems don't exist is not really an option for a great marriage. It's a great option for a pretty bad marriage. You just avoid each other. Anyone else? This is great stuff. I don't know if I want to get to my next slide. Y'all are doing great. What are other things that you get from this? What does this stir up in you? Well, I hope you'll find this helpful. I mean, I hope this doesn't just beat you down. I don't want it to if it starts doing that, stop it. Stop the exercise, I mean the genogram thing, and just say, this is a little too hurtful. But if it's not undoing you at a level where now harm is being done, if it just hurts, let yourself hurt a little bit, but don't let harm happen. Harm is destructive. Hurt can kind of lead us towards, God, help me get through this. I've been avoiding this for years. I mean, I meet people all the time that don't want to talk about when their dad left at 2 or when they didn't meet their dad until they were 30. I don't want to talk about it. It hadn't affected me at all, really. Okay, so I would encourage you to not make friends with these things, but to go into places. But again, if you need the help of a counselor, find a counselor that can walk with you through this, or a pastor. I don't want you all to become each other's pastors or counselors. I think you can it's kind of like having your spouse be your weight loss accountability partner. It's a bad idea. You're looking a little fat this week. Oh, thank you so much. I feel so good about myself. So don't become each other's therapist. Do this. This is really an alone project. Now, oftentimes when I'm working with a couple, I'll work with, let's say, the man on his genogram. And when we're finished, I'll ask his wife, is there anything that you see differently, or do you have anything? And sometimes it's like jab, 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 and sometimes it's really helpful information. You left out the part that your mother is a drunk. I mean, yeah, I did leave that out. I didn't think to put that in. I mean, something that's now been stuffed so far back that they don't even, it's just normal. So normal is that, and he just thought, I mean, this happens a lot, where they leave things out. You might want to mention the thing where you were molested by your soccer coach growing up. Yeah, you're right, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that in 30 years, that kind of thing, because we have a tendency to take things that hurt very deeply and shoot them into our brain where we can fix them and shoot them back into compartments that will never be visited again. And the hard thing is keeping it in your heart and actually expressing that, but a lot of us just shoot it up, and then we can rationalize it, or we can compartmentalize it, or justify it, or whatever you want to call it, excuse it. We oftentimes will protect people that are very significant to us. So I would encourage you to push yourself some, but I don't want you to go too far to where you're really undone by it. Yes? Yeah, very often what you're saying is, a lot of times it's a reactive model. We showed this a couple of weeks ago where, I'll never be like that, so we go do this. And a lot of times that reactive thing isn't necessarily better, it's just really different. It would be like someone who was married to someone who was abusive, and they get divorced, and they go, I'm looking for a man that doesn't abuse. But they might ignore other qualities that they're really important qualities, but the fact that it's just not like that, it's kind of a reactive mood, like I think what you're saying. And then I think just, if our family of origin was very painful, we're very often going to react to that, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's better. There's still a middle that can be balanced, but I think that's a good point. Anyone else? Let me go to this. Let me try to get through a few slides. Why I think this is helpful is it helps us understand where our beliefs, our shoulds, our rules, our fears, our guilt, shame, hurts, thought patterns. That's what you were seeing in the clip. Thought patterns were actually being done. Triggers, triggers, sensitivities, and behaviors. That's just some things that come from just working on your genogram. You'll really learn a lot about yourself if you dig into this. Some you'll like and some you won't like. And there's different types of genograms. You can do an anger genogram, how our family has dealt with anger from generation to generation, how we have dealt with conflict, resolving conflict. He shuts down, she yells, or he yells and rages and she gets scared. And, so you can kind of see patterns of those behaviors that are modeled for us as we're growing up. And what you'll find, like she was just saying, is sometimes we model that because that's all we really know. This is a silly little thing, but this is to me how it can be acted out. And I'm not a drawer, as you can tell, but here's Jane and here's Jane's dad. All right, Jane's dad, he thinks it's real important to save some money. So if the air conditioning goes out, you've got money. Okay, so Jane begins to think similar thoughts to Dad. Does this make sense? I just did this last night kind of pretty quickly. We don't save well, we should save more than we do. Now you see the should coming in here, okay? Now, the should is Dad. Shoulds are never your thoughts, they're someone else's. We should save more money. You don't just come up with that on your own. That's a family rule, most likely. I won't say always, I just say most likely that's something, and in this example, it came from Dad. I think it's important to save. Well, Dad would know, Dad's Dad. I mean, and so then, now Jane and Bill have a relationship where she's saying now to Bill, why aren't you a better provider? I don't feel safe with you doing the finances. You're not like my daddy. That's what she's saying. She's saying, I felt safe with him, Dad, and you don't save 10% or whatever the number is in case something goes wrong. And so this is just an example of how one person's, and it didn't, now what Dad didn't probably say is, whatever you do, honey, when you marry a man, make sure he saves 10%. It probably never happened, but we pick up these rules just by being around Dad. It was important to Dad. That's important to me. Why is it important to you? Well, because my family, we did it differently. We did 20%, we did 5%. We took loans out. Well, that's not right. You're not supposed to get loans. But you see how convoluted this can get when we start. Now, what do you think happens to Bill when she says, why aren't you a better provider? I don't feel safe with you doing the finances. Defends himself. Great. What else? Yeah, he'll get angry and defend. You're right. He will defend himself. Yeah, this is what happens to him. He just knocked his legs off. Thank you. That was my animation for the day. But that is what happens. It does knock a man at the knees. It's shame. It takes a man to usually, and they will defend themselves because of the shame. But what the message really is you're not providing well. You're not being a man. You're not the man I thought I married. You're not who I hoped you would be. You're not my champion. You're not my knight in shining armor. You've let me down. You're unsafe. I don't know where you guys would go with that. I would go to a place of shame, and then I would either come back with some defensive type thing. That would be my natural inclination. I like what Dan Allender was talking, I believe it was in The Wounded Heart, that when we feel shame, we've got to blame somebody. We either blame ourselves, and I'm probably misquoting, so Dan, I'm sorry if I'm misquoting you, but either we're going to blame ourselves. I'm nothing, I should have done this different, I should have been better, this is always my fault, I always do that, I'm a loser. We can go there, or when we're taken to shame, we go back and do what you were just talking, which is now I'm going to blame you. Well, you think I'm bad, let me tell you what you just did, okay? Because feeling shame is miserable. I can't live in shame. None of us really do well feeling worthless. It's just too much. It is our core of cores, I think, as a human. We need to know that we have value. And we're going to move more, like you were saying earlier, of where our real value comes from. But today, Bill's value was just decreased by his wife. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's really, I just want to show y'all. It took me a long time to make those legs drop like that. His whole body fell off a couple of times. His head rolled down the page one time. So thank you for allowing me to do that. Why else is this helpful? to recognize the past influences that are currently affecting our lives, our partners' lives. So it's not just about us being affected by how we have been raised. It's also affecting my marriage. Her background affects our marriage. My background affects our marriage. Trust me, all of our backgrounds are affecting our marriages. Here's where it gets more serious to me, is it affects our children's lives. We're raising kids with those same rules that got passed down that are, some of them are pretty bad rules, pretty bad thoughts, pretty bad shoulds. But if we don't, again, like you're saying, if we don't know what they are, like you were saying, if we don't know what they are, how do we even know what to change? How do we know what to even pray? God, help me not pass down low self-esteem to my child. Help me to build them up. And sometimes, like you were saying, we go the other direction and then we build them up so much that if they're not ever always built up, I don't know if you can say that, if they're not always built up by their spouse someday, they're going to feel like a, so we can really go overboard in any direction. So parenting perfectly is impossible, by the way. So you can go ahead and get on over that as quickly as you can. But we are affecting our children just by living life in front of them, and that just undoes me. And most clients that come in go, you know, we don't want to do this to our kids. We can already see, they hear, and maybe you've heard this, but you hear your voice coming out of your children. You're going, oh no, I can't. What do you know, though I won't even tell you what you hear, but then you start, that's when couples sometimes come in, my children are starting to mimic us. Dad, it's because you're never here, you know, that kind of thing. And that, you know, so now it's gone on to the children, so it's affecting our marriage. But since we're not stuck, we can choose to unlearn these things. Now, we won't ever forget them, but we can work on the areas of influence that are unresolved and affecting the quality of our lives, our families, and our marriage. Families meaning children and all that kind of stuff. So we are absolutely every bit of that. Any questions? Because I think I'm kind of at a place where if I go any further, I'm going to have to get into another whole section. What does this do to you when you hear, or what is your response to this when you hear how this affects you, your partner, and your children? We just can't do this. I mean, we can't do it perfectly ever, and we really, so if we evaluate ourselves based on our performance, we usually kind of trick ourselves into think we're doing a pretty good job or a horrible job or whatever that thing is. But if we're doing this alone and just basically going, God, okay, on this one I need a little help, we've missed it by light years. We need help every morning before we get out of bed just to have grace and just to surrender. I know I do. I mean, that's usually my prayer on the way into work is help me surrender. And you counsel today. Help me hear what you're saying so that I can do what you want done. Otherwise, I'm just going to go in and do what I've learned, and that's what we all do. So yeah, you're exactly right. This is scary, yet, and once we get past the fact that we're never going to do this perfectly, let's go ahead and just blow that out. Let's just do this as unto the Lord. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean perfectly, so maybe it means with excellence. Maybe it means with a heart of compassion, like we go back to the verse. And as what we'll keep building into is how do we take this and not just undo ourselves with it, but how do we make this productive and move it towards making a better marriage and making a better family. And that's my goal. My goal is not to hurt us. My goal is to bring up some difficult things so that we can grow together and then realize that I'm broken and my wife is broken. And so we're two people just kind of limping through life, trying to love each other like God loves us and trying to forgive each other like God forgives us. And it's difficult. All marriages are difficult. This is, like you said earlier, this is not all about me and I'll just, you know, I've got my rough edges, but why would I need to change that? This is why, because it's not working. I mean, well, it doesn't work to just be you. This is who I am and I'm not changing. That doesn't work. Yes. Yeah. And yeah, that's a great point. You know, because we can live in denial that these things are really fixable or need to be fixed. And so it's like to me, it's like going on a diet or working out. I mean, I just have to suck it up for a few days because my first few days of dieting, I'm miserable. I've learned now to go out of town for a few days or stay busy in the yard or do something because it's hard. But I'll go back to where I'm not a big workout nut anymore because my body doesn't work anymore. But I've never regret it after it's over. I never go, man, I wish I hadn't worked out. Man, I wish I hadn't lost 10 pounds or whatever. I never do that. But getting started on changing, it's going to be difficult. But it's going to be, if you stay with it, it's usually worth it. And for the sake of your children and your marriage, it's worth working. I need to be working on myself. Teresa needs to be working on herself. We all need to be in this sanctification process of becoming more like Christ. we need to not just take it easy and sit out in a river thinking we're going downstream. I promise you. You're either swimming upstream, probably not going very fast because you're upstream, or you just relax and you're rushing down and you don't even, if you've ever swam in the ocean before, and I get the swim thing mixed up from time to time, so if I mess that up, please forgive me and have grace. But if you've ever just gone out from the beach and you hang out there for a while, and after about 30 minutes and you look back and you have just slowly drifted down, and yet that hotel is not there anymore, or that condo, and where am I? And you may be about a quarter of a mile down because you just drifted very slowly. And I think that's what this is like, is it's not so sudden. Sometimes there's traumas and there's really big blow-ups in a family that really cause problems and we need to change, but sometimes it's so subtle and we just kind of get sucked into the subtlety of it, and before we know it, we've been married 10, 20 years and we're way away from the hotel much further away from the hotel than we thought we were. So I think that's a great point. So any other points or questions before we close in prayer? I appreciate y'all interacting. This helps me a lot. I need to know what you're hearing. And I think just to talk about these things, usually there's somebody in here that's afraid to ask a question, and when you ask it, it either gives them courage to ask their question or it answers a question that's going on. So I really do appreciate your feedback. I love that. And what that reminds me is that's why we need to extend grace to her. That's why we need to move, because my genogram, I'm not going to change all of how it affects me ever. I'll never want to have conflict. I'll always tend to avoid conflict. Teresa comes from the same kind of background. We both would rather avoid conflict, but we love each other and we love our marriage enough to where we move towards conflict instead of avoiding it. Avoiding it can kill a relationship. So that's a great point, in that I'll never be rid of all this. It will always affect me at some level, and it will always affect my wife at some level, hers. And so if I don't have compassion for her now that I know more of where she's coming from and she understands me, like she was saying a minute ago, I can't extend grace. If I'm judgmental and self-righteous, it's just my arrogance. I just don't want to realize that I'm this broken too. And I'd rather point out your faults than let's look at mine. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff that we get you can get a lot of great stuff from bad parents, to be honest with you. So yeah, there's a lot of good that I'm not even addressing, and I'm not saying let's find all the junk and but there's a lot of good. It's just noticing the good isn't quite as effective in understanding and having compassion. But I think that's a good point, because we kind of take for granted the good stuff. Don't lose the good stuff. We need that. I just want you to get rid of the bad stuff, kind of thing. But I think that's a real good point. We have a lot of good traits that we've picked up. Yes. What I hear you saying is, what's healthy in your family that you're bringing may not be something that she likes or is healthy in her family. Your normal is different than her normal. Teasing and joking and putting each other down may be fun and healthy in your family, but maybe in her family it's hurtful, and that's how people hurt me, was through sarcasm. So yeah, what's healthy is going to be different for both of you guys. That's why you see life so differently, and that's why the process of communication is real important, so that you can talk about your differences. I see it this way, not it is this way. I see it this way. And instead of moving from judgment of you shouldn't see it that way, or you shouldn't be hurt, that's when we get invalidated by each other. If my wife tells me she's hurt, and I can understand anything of why, if she helps me understand, then I can move towards her in compassion. But if it's just attacking me, which she doesn't do, but if somebody's just saying, here's where you mess up and you do this and you do this and you do this, the first thing I'm thinking is, duck, run for cover, shut down, pull away, or fight back, fight or flight. So I think we're all going to do this very differently. What you'll find patterns are, when one gets angry, they shut down, or they stuff it in, or they rage, or there's all different kind of patterns that this will bring up. You'll see more of it as you get into it. What I find is that when I do this, then it allows me to dump my brain, and now I can think of other things, especially on the timeline. When we get to that, if you choose to do that, I did a timeline, and one time for a class that I was in. And I thought I had it, and then throughout the week, all these other things that I had forgotten. The most traumatic thing in my life I had forgotten, and I had it was something that I did as a child that just undid me. So I had stuffed it so far back that I didn't even know it existed anymore. I really had forgotten about it. And so, I was able and some really good things were back there, things that I remembered I wanted to tell someone, I never told you this, but this really was amazing in my life that you did or said this. So it was good and bad, but until I got the junk that's here out on paper, I couldn't get to the deeper stuff that was inside. So we'll keep moving on. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for your input and feedback. Anything you want to add?
I would say, too, I think one of the beautiful things about just talking about this is it will bring to bear inside all of us, if you're a believer and you read Scripture, then what does it mean to actually walk in faith in accordance with what I've learned from the Scripture? How much does Scripture tell me to change another person, and how much does it say create in me a clean? How much is my walk in doing that? I'll also encourage us all in realizing, too, that as the Lord says to us, no temptation has overcome you, but such as is common to man. Everybody's temptation is to blame and to shame. Everybody's. Started in the garden. So no temptation has overcome you that a means of escape. So we come to him. So the gospel's not calling us to walk around our past. It's actually calling us to embrace a sovereign God who has given us our families of origin and say, now, here's what I've given you, and I've given you my best for you. How will you walk in it, through it, be shaped by the more about what we learned from our past? The Lord has given me gifts of coming alongside and helping and understanding, and my heart moves very quickly toward anybody who has been wounded and abused and hurt. Why? Because the Lord had me live through it. When my dad died at 6, and he was an alcoholic, to actually feel something inside for somebody else. Does that make sense? God takes all of our woundedness and uses it for his glory, and that is the power of the gospel, and we can rest in him.
Thank you. I'm going to close this in prayer. Two things. One is, for those of you that came in late, there's a homework assignment that's floating around. If you want to take it home, it's got directions on it. It's the genogram homework kind of thing. Also, there's a notebook, a place for you to put your name, your phone number, your email address. I don't send junk mail and jokes around. It's just in case there's something you need to know about a class or whatever. So let me close this with a word of prayer. Father, this is, I thank you for this time together. This is very difficult, dirty stuff to uncover is what's happened in our lives. But the beauty part of it, Lord, is that you were there all along. And sometimes we don't understand why you didn't stop it, and sometimes you let us see why you didn't stop it and what you're developing in us, and your work is not done in us, Lord. So I just pray for this process that those that need to not do this genogram, Lord, will know not to do it, and those that do, Lord, that you will give them the wisdom to know how to put things down that will be helpful to them and in their marriages and with their children. Lord, help us to not give up on ourselves, and help us to just surrender to you, because I know you want us more and more like Christ every day. So I thank you for your forgiveness. I thank you that you understand. You know our sin. You love us and forgive us our sin. I just pray that help us this week, Lord, to love and forgive our partners in the same way that you do us every day, all day. Thank you for your grace. Thank you that we're not alone in this journey. Thank you that it's not just how hard can I work on this and how hard can I work reading books or going to counseling or doing whatever, Lord, but that you are my master. You are my guide. You are the healer. So, Lord, just take us this week where you want us to go emotionally, mentally. Grow us up in you, Lord, and have your way with us. In Jesus' name, amen.